Hi everyone, I am Deborah Grant, Master Chatter at Chatter House Audio Tours Inc. and the host of the Curfew Line. Well, today's guest is Judith Gill. She's an educator, and some may even dare say she's my sister. While she's
Yes.
not my biological sister, but we have grown up in
Sister
a
from another mother.
community. Yes, we have definitely grown up in a community where it was not expected to hang out by your neighbor, but we sure did. Sometimes people wondered who lived at which house, but many of
Very
those
true.
hangout
Very true.
spots, yes, many of those hangout spots actually led us to hang out on the wall. And we've realized as adults that it was there that we honed a lot of our skills, like
It's true.
storytelling and talking.
And get into a little bit of trouble too, just a little bit.
And boy, you know we can talk, right? So
Definitely.
therefore,
All night.
today's interview is going to be a little challenging because we have to keep it short in 30 minutes or so. But we'll try to get there. So what I'll do now is I'll stop
Right time
talking
it.
and I'll let Judy, who I call her Judy, but for some of you out there, you better still call her Miss Gill. But Judy this evening will be just hanging out and letting me know today, because we can talk about anything we can talk about. But today we want to focus on education because she's been an educator pretty much all of her life in one way or the other. So that's going to be our focus today. We're going to try to make it our focus today. So Judy, tell me, you could tell me something little bit about yourself, although that could be a little while, but we're going to come back to education. So tell us more about you in terms of your educational side of life.
Well, I was named Judith after my grandmother, who was a principal. So I suppose it was destined almost. And all of my adult life, as Deborah said, I've been in education. I've been teaching for just over 25 years. And looking at education from many perspectives, I have tried my best to dabble in as many areas as possible. So, for example, I'm a published author. I have tried my best to see education from many different vantage points. For example, Singapore, North Carolina, Ghana. And also, I have done some work in terms of preparing curriculum. I have done some work in terms of teaching both primary, secondary, tertiary level. So I'm always looking for new opportunities in the field of education.
Good. So I'm not going to let this one slide by. You said you're a published author. So tell us
Yes.
the book if you can. And I'm sure you can because you want the book sold. Tell us about this book that you co-authored.
Is this the point at which I'm supposed to pick it up from next to me and hold it up?
You better.
I actually don't have it with me. The book is called Caribbean Social Studies, and it is published by University Press and for CXC Social Studies, preparation for CXC Social Studies.
Okay, give me the name of the book again.
Caribbean Social Studies is available locally and is available on Amazon as well.
Great, that's wonderful. Yes, so we have our book covered. So go ahead.
Yep.
You've been to Singapore, you've been to North Carolina, which I forgot. Yes, you did go to Ghana. I forgot that one too.
Yeah.
And all of these experiences, especially going into education, must therefore give you a wide expanse of expectations and experiences that you would want to bring into this local environment. That I find is the case with persons in any field who travel anywhere in the world. Not that only when Barbadians travel, but when other people travel outside of their culture, it opens their minds to different experiences. So tell me a bit about what those experiences might have done in terms of contributing to who you are as an educator.
Okay, before I start though, how could I have left out that I taught in Bermuda for 6 years? So that definitely would have been very central to shaping the person I am right now as an educator. But going back, I would have first had the opportunity to go to Singapore to do a training course with the Singapore government. And that completely changed the way in which I look at education. They're very systematic in the way that they do everything. And then when I was on long leave, I took the opportunity to once again return to Singapore and spend a month basically just observing in schools there. And for me, that created a desire to see even more. I then had the opportunity through the Rotary to go to North Carolina on a program called the Group Study Exchange, where I was able to see my profession at work in another location. I was able to do that. From there, when I was on long leave and I went to Singapore, I also visited Ghana. That for me was a lifelong dream and a life-changing event to see how much could be done with such a little bit, and to see excellence coming forward in a situation where people were basically having a very hard time. But at the same time, excellence must insist. They were reaching a point of excellence. Bermuda, on the other hand, an environment which is highly technologically rich. There's absolutely no shortage of what you would need, whether it be training, whether it be materials, whether it be facilities in terms of delivering education. So all of this has informed the way in which I see education. And what it has told me is to do the best we can with what we have. Not that we should not advocate for more, not that we should not desire more,
Right.
but we must focus on doing the best we can with whatever we have.
Right. Excellence. Resources should not hinder the or excellence in education
Yes,
and
correct,
the mindset, because that's where it comes
correct.
down to, the mindset. Yes. Okay, wonderful. So what have you been doing since then in terms of all of this? You have all of this wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm not going to get into the politics of it. When I say politics, I don't mean elective politics. I mean, the general meaning of the word politics of education in Barbados. But what do you see as, especially now, I've been hearing a lot this week, and maybe since we've gone into the curfew and the lockdown, there have been some challenges with some children not being able to have access to technology. And it seems as
Yeah.
though somehow we are behind the curve on this one. Now, I have my own opinion where this is concerned. And I'm going to
Everybody
say,
does.
because I don't want you to say it, but I want it out there. I always have a problem when you have forward thinkers who bring things to the table, and then you have the populace saying, no, it can't be done. And then down the line, you discover that if we had done it, we would be in a different position. So I know there's some programs that would have been done before that would have brought technology into the classrooms. And we seem to think of these things as being evil, and now we are now in a position where we're saying, oh, I wish I had, I wish, I wish, I wish. So that's going to be my spiel. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that because I don't know whether that will get you into any trouble or not. So if you can comment that won't get you into trouble, that's fine. If you don't, that's just as fine. But I just want to get out there that sometimes, it's good to have persons like you who have all these experiences, but then it doesn't make sense if we can't use those experiences to enhance where we are, to advance where we are to in terms of future planning. You can make a comment or you can go on to something else.
Well, I think you answered the question you asked, but I will still try. No, I'll still try. You answered the question you asked. Firstly, you asked me, what am I doing? So I would say firstly that I think I have a restless mind.
Mhm.
So although I am a classroom teacher and I enjoy being a classroom teacher, I'm always looking for new ways in which to get involved in education. So at the moment, I am doing some work with persons who may need help in terms of education, but not necessarily to be taught a subject. So I'm working right now on a program, academic recovery program. My first client, a young man whose parents realized here's an opportunity during the pandemic for him to get some assistance and get him back on track. And now that the school has started posting work for him, I'm able to work along with what is being posted to try to get him in a better place when school resumes, whenever it does resume. So that's one side of what I've been doing, and I've been doing some other work in relation to that as well. But perhaps that's for another discussion. As far as the present situation, island-wide or worldwide, in terms of dealing with having to transition so abruptly from the classroom, the physical classroom, to online learning, I think that it is going to be one of those situations where if we do what we always do as Barbadians and take limes and make lemonade or make do and find a way, then I think that we can come out of this better off for me, transitioning from Bermuda, where everything was technology was quite a robust system of technology was in support what was happening in the classroom. It was quite a bit of a transition. I had to remind myself, but this is where you come from, though, and this is what you was doing before you went, though. So just do it. So I jumped back in there. But at the same time, I mean, imagine a situation where the moment you enter a score into a grade book, the parent sees it and the parent can call you and say, well, why did my child fail? And immediately there's a discussion and involvement in terms of trying to solve the problem. And coming to back to a system where, as far as I'm concerned, it was even further back than it had been when I had left 6 years earlier. So this situation presents the opportunity for us to jumpstart the system in terms of technology. It also presents the opportunity for greater involvement of parents, because imagine now I'm teaching a lesson and a parent could be in the background listening. As a matter of fact, I've heard of teachers saying that parents are asking questions during the lesson, which in itself is quite novel. It's a good thing, but it also creates a level of stress for educators who are themselves jumped this process. Some people who even left their books and files and notes at work when things close so abruptly.
Right.
So it is really a situation where we have to work with each other. Teachers have to work with parents, and students have to be willing to get up and, you know, just do the best they can. I've also noticed there's some conversation about getting devices to students. And I know personally of situations where people are already out there delivering devices to students
Okay,
who
nice.
do not have them.
Nice.
There are also situations where teachers are begging friends, do you have an old phone? Do you have something that you can give to me that I can pass on to this student who's trying or who's interested but just does not have a device?
Yeah.
So, you know, all of this has to do with us being creative and trying to problem solve, because at the end of it all, we will never get back the time that's lost during this pandemic. But if we can make the most of it, then I think that we will have less of a deficit when school resumes. Was that politically correct enough, Deborah?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, less of a deficit because we kind of got disconnected there for a second.
Oh, sorry. I said that if we can do the best we can right now, that we'll have less of a deficit to fill educationally when school resumes.
Yes, yes. Now while I'm not an educator in that sense, I do have a passion for seeing young people become the best that they can be.
Yes.
And I don't like when they're disadvantaged for one reason or the other. But I guess there's a reason why I don't have the resources to just go out there and give everybody a unit. Because I mean, I would love to, but again,
Yes.
we had a campaign where we were trying to get the island Wi-Fi, the entire
Yes.
Wi-Fi coverage around the island, free Wi-Fi. And here
Mm-hmm.
again, I saw
Perfect
immediately
opportunity.
it was a perfect opportunity now, because
Yeah.
then we wouldn't have to worry. Because really and truly, like within my church environment where I deal with the youth, I can immediately think of two families. One have 4 children in them, 4 different levels of education that they're
Mm-hmm.
going through. When I checked yesterday, they told me that each 2 of them sharing one tablet and the other 2 is sharing the tablet with a parent. So that's who has to work. So that's
Yes.
2 tablets among 5 people to use
Yeah.
during the day. And then there's another one who has 5 children, again,
Yes.
all at different levels. They don't have internet connectivity, and they just had, I think, phones. I don't even think they have tablets, and they may not have necessarily top of the line phones that they can access the necessary things. And I immediately think of these children. We now have to find a way to respond to these children,
Yes.
right? To respond to the needs of these children, and in this environment. And this has me thinking, how do we not only respond for now, but in the future? How do we stop
Yes.
when people see the future? How do we stop people from stopping them from developing what they know the future needs?
Okay. Well, that's a mammoth question, because there's a lot of economics involved in that question. Firstly, the cost of providing what these students need, and then secondly, the issue of sheeting the island of Wi-Fi and the providers who have the rights to do that, therefore not earning during that time period. I know there's some discussion with the providers to see if they could provide something for students to use during this time period. But the divide was always there. The divide was always there. Now we're focusing on the divide, the child who has Wi-Fi and the child that does not. We're looking at the divide, the child who has a computer and the child who does not. But the divide was always there. There were students going to school without lunch. There were students who didn't make it to school because there was nothing to, well, bus fare is not an issue, but you still have to have those clothes to wear. There were students who were not making it to school because their parents needed them to stay home and keep siblings. There were students who were not making it to school because of whatever the violence or domestic issues in their homes. So this divide is just now reaching the technological level because we are teaching online. But prior to this, the divide was always there. And I think that addressing the divide in terms of technology must include a discussion about addressing the divide generally and what we can do to address this. In terms of moving forward, I think that once we have started using the technology in this extreme way, I should say extreme, extensive way,
Right.
that in the future it will be hard to say to a parent, oh, well, COVID is over, so you can't contact me anymore, or COVID is over, so I'm not going to be posting anything in that classroom anymore. And believe me, as a classroom teacher, I can tell you that teachers are under a lot of pressure. They're really under a lot of pressure because many people, because they do not have the technology at school, they have not digitized the resources. So you were teaching chalk and talk not by choice, but you were teaching chalk and talk out of necessity. And now you are thrust into teaching online. So you are now in the process of digitizing these resources. And remember, teachers themselves may not have that scanner to work with, may not have the best quality laptop to work with. So we're talking about students' needs, but we also have to address the needs of teachers in terms of doing this.
And this,
I would reference, just before you go on, I would reference the program that I saw in Singapore, where they actually had a unit that used to investigate those students who did not have computers, and they provided computers for their home for those students who did not have computers. And they checked on it, they monitored it. They even provided internet when students did not have internet. But again, that's a whole different scale in terms of financing. And especially coming out of COVID, I don't know what we'll be able to afford the finance and that type of activity. But without COVID, it could be provided perhaps at a community library. So the student who does not have the computer at home could still go into a community library and access the internet to do work.
well, there are two things that come out there. Is one that I read in the press, a section of the press yesterday, that there's an organization that actually donated about 70,000 tablets over the last 10 years. And, so that's something that someone would have been doing. And apparently when they were asked, do they think it was worth the investment? They said no, because it's been underused. They saw it as an opportunity for a press release kind of thing, but it didn't trickle down the way they wanted it to trickle down.
But what I would say, Deborah, in defense of my fellow educators, consider these two situations. In Bermuda, and I teach using the school tablets. I simply collected them, logged them out, take them to the classroom, use them for whatever activity, log them back in when it was done. In Barbados, their tablets, but there's no Wi-Fi on the compound. So how do I take them into the classroom and use them? So
Right.
when you talk about underutilizing them, short of logging them out to students and letting them take them home, and that's a whole other issue, because we have to see how we're going to secure them and make sure that they are some use come the end of the year, the end of the week, the end of the month. How can I use it in an environment which does not have the necessary Wi-Fi for me to use it?
Well,
So there are layers to this thing.
right. So therefore, what I'm saying is that should not even be a discussion, because it's not just a matter of getting the tablets, but that other part, all of the infrastructure needed to make it back just to the point where you log out and you go into the classroom and you use them. Though all that infrastructure needs to be put in place and needed to be put in place. The thing is that given we're talking about COVID now, but the truth of the matter is, right now, there will not be classroom as usual.
Yes.
We cannot have classroom as usual, so we're going to have to find a way of meshing. If we do open back up the schools, it's not going to be able to open back in the same way with the X amount of children in the classroom, because then we run the risk of a spread. So therefore, we're going to have to try to find a mesh. So we have to get these infrastructures in place now. And it's not just a matter of lip service or whatever. And we have to take everybody into consideration. Now, you talk about the teachers who have been trying to get people to get like phones and the laptops and that type of stuff. But I know teachers have been pulling their pockets all for years, buying pencils, buying lunch,
Definitely.
buying uniforms,
Mm-hmm.
buying books, buying. I know that for a fact. I know that the teachers who at the beginning of a school term, they go shopping for their class because they know the students that are not. The thing is that, you know, this, and again, now this is my opinion now. I mean, not that all of it wasn't my opinion, but I mean on this particular topic, is that, you know, sometimes we get too emotional about a situation. So when we bring when we say something like, oh, we have students in the classroom who are not learning, and you get the emotional response, well, I'm teaching and it's not my fault or whatever. Let us take away the emotion and let us sit down and say, these are the reasons why our children are not learning. These are the reasons why I am not teaching. These are the reasons why X, Y, Z. Let us now come with a solution, and let us get to a point of solution. And I think sometimes everything gets lost because we get emotional and defensive first, especially within the teaching service. We seem to get emotional and defensive before we try to address the solutions. So for me, in this case now, I want us to get to the solutions. So yes, I know there are the teachers who have difficult times. Yes, I know there are teachers that have the books and everything else back there. Yes, I know there are the students who don't have the equipment. Yes, I know there's no internet. How do we get it? Whose ear do we have to bend?
Well, there's so many challenges in solving that problem right now. And I believe that steps are being put in place from what I'm hearing from my colleagues. People are doing what they can.
Mhm.
Let's start there. People are doing what they can. That's the start. Devices are being provided where they are available. So devices that would have been available to use at school are now being distributed. We don't know will be of any use. Things start back up again, but at least they're being used right now. I know that there are networks of teachers who are sharing materials among themselves.
Mhm.
And within some schools, departments are working collectively to share materials from one to the other. There are also online platforms that are providing free resources. We're even having a lot of creativity coming out of it. I saw a beautiful video created by a local teacher just recently, which is going to be used, and I'm sure it will be shared widely because it's on YouTube. So things are starting to happen, but the problem may be within the time that we need to make it happen, it really cannot reach its optimum point. So at this point, I think whatever people are capable of doing will have to be enough. And we have to be cognizant of that. Many parents are being very, very understanding and considerate and are working along with the teachers in the schools right now as they try to do whatever they can. And they're just happy to have something happening for their children to keep them engaged. But it has increased the level of transparency and accountability in the teaching profession exponentially, really. And I don't know if it's because I would have spent 6 years in a system where somebody was constantly watching what you were doing, whether it was cameras on the compound, whether it was using Google Classroom or Google programs where you can see every keystroke that I was putting in, or whether it was the fact that I had observations every week. But I'm accustomed to being observed, which I think our local teachers are not accustomed to that high level of scrutiny. So imagine that pressure added to having to digitize everything. So to mine, to be honest, as long as teachers are trying their best and they're putting one foot in front of the other, I think we will get to where we need to be. And then what we need to look at, like you're saying, is integrating this into the system when we return to the classroom.
Yeah, I don't want this to, I want to say here quick because I want to go on to another point that you had raised earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say here quickly that I think there are teachers in this system that are fantastic and they're going way beyond. And they are going to be, like every profession, the bad apples. But I don't want us
Mm-hmm.
to have a conversation, a general conversation because of the bad apples. But I want us to be able to celebrate the good ones as well. more so,
Thank
and
you.
try to
Thank you.
address the bad
Appreciate it.
apples in the meantime. I think that's where we get confused. We don't get to celebrate one set or address the other set because the emotions come running in.
Yes.
So I want to, at this point, say thanks to all those teachers who are out there trying to make the best. I think that yes,
Mhm.
and I'm looking forward to the policymakers really using this because we have to change the way we do education. COVID has insisted that we do, and we will not be able to go back to the way we were. Our children's health rely on us making good decisions right now. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about that student who you're helping to um, get back on track or to get on track. That kind of service or that kind of interaction that you're having. Because we have many students out there who, for one reason or the other, falling by the wayside, and no one or I should say no one, it's not a structured environment where we can say, okay, you know what? I can call Miss Gill and put him under or her under the tutelage of Miss Gill, who is not going to be teaching him history, social studies, English, geography, math, but is going to try to understand the psychology and the different things that are making this child have this challenge. I want to hear more about your thoughts on that and what you do or can do in that environment.
Well, I'm a history, social studies, Caribbean studies teacher, and but my master's in educational psychology. So I have never really worked directly in the area of educational psychology, but I always say that I think that that master's made me a better teacher than just the content that I would have done with the BA or even the teacher training directly. Um, we have to speak to the heart of the child and we have to teach the child holistically. And this is something that we endeavor to do, but quite often because of classroom size and many other factors, it becomes very difficult. There are many children that are being lost through the system, and there are provisions in place, there are programs in place, and unfortunately, they don't always reach everyone. And we always have this idea that it is a child with a learning disability or a child who is a problem child who's destined to be locked away eventually, who is having this struggle. But this struggle happens throughout the system. And the program that I've been developing, an academic recovery program, really deals with straddling the psychology with the content areas, with
Give me, give
helping the
me, give me
child
that
to
again.
understand
Sorry,
why.
sorry, Judy. Give me that part again. It helps with
Yes,
what?
it helps in straddling the psychology with the content so that we help the child to understand why you're falling short and help the child understand this is what I need to do differently. Working to eradicate behaviors that working in terms of being successful and working on improving on learning that are going to lead to that success. And this is a deliberate action. This is not simply a by the way, pick up this may help, and I have 20 other children, so I have to run off. Fortunate in this situation, these parents were able to provide this child with a one-on-one session, and I meet with him 4 days a week, and I've been able to give him quite a bit. We're still waiting for him to turn that corner, but I'm sure it's coming. And with the support at home, I'm sure that we will get there. But there are many students who don't have that, and unfortunately, mass education tends to stand in the way of that child who gets lost by the wayside. My thoughts on it, I believe that more needs to be done, but more needs to be done in so many areas. And as we know, budgets are stretched and people are stretched, and there's only so much that can be done. Um, but we need to get back to the day when the teacher was allowed to kind of take control of their classroom, and the teacher was trusted to be able to speak to the heart of the child. There's one thing that I really thought of looking at in terms of doing a PhD, and that was production line education. The idea that once we put all these children on a conveyor belt on one end, and we give them the right amount of time and the right books, and people have the right qualifications and the right physical structures and internet and whatever, success comes the other end. That is not the case with human beings. As you know, there's so many variables, and we need to allow people to teach not just from the book, but from the heart. and move away from this defensive teaching. I make sure I dot this I and cross this T, and I make sure that I don't say the wrong thing and I have to be politically correct at all times. And don't get me wrong, I'm suggesting in any way that we violate the rights of students or that teachers should be given carte blanche to do what they feel like. But we have to put their heart back into education and be allowed to do so. Many people still do it. Many people still do it, but in some cases, it is, although they have been advised not to, it's like stick to this program, and they have to go around that program. There are teachers who go home to students to deliver this and pick up this and provide that, like I said earlier, to even feed students, provide for their needs. And sometimes we do it quietly because, you know, people still have their pride and we still have to respect people in all situations. But quite often, and teachers are seeing it now. One teacher said to me, because I do run a Facebook page called Teachers Have Wings, where teachers congregate and commiserate and share ideas and thoughts. But teacher said to me in a conversation, you know, I am now understanding my students better. Now I'm teaching online because I'm having students who have to shout at their parents and beg for quiet so that they can do the lesson. And these are things that as teachers we would not have seen when we see the child turn up in the classroom. Homework is not done. Why have you done your homework?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know the kind of situation that this child might be living in. But now we are, just as the parents are getting to witness us at work, we are also getting to witness the
See the
child at
child's
home.
environment.
And it
Yes.
is revealing quite a lot as well.
Yes. Yes. I think this world that we have now is revealing quite a bit about everyone, not only teacher, parents, and teacher
Yes.
environment, but it's revealing quite a bit about others. But it's also creating lots of opportunities. Now, when you shared there just now, I thought maybe this was an avenue that maybe someone who's retired from the classroom
Yeah.
but still has something or wants to contribute, maybe that's an area that they can certainly come in and help with, because we have enough students out there who needs help just getting back on track. And it
Yes.
may just be one conversation that that child might need to
Yes.
have to
Definitely.
flip that switch. Or, you know, it might take a little bit more hand holding to do. So I think that's an excellent thing that you are pursuing and you're offering. And I will encourage anyone else who is so gifted. Notice I'm saying gifted and not
Thank you.
educated. Anyone who is so gifted to please, you know, if they can check you out on that Facebook page to get more information or to find out how to develop such a program, because I really feel passionate. I work, as I told you earlier, I work, you know, that I've always worked with young people.
Yes.
And I am seeing a generation of young people now that seem to think education is not cool. And until you explain to them the importance of education, they kind of like, you know. But when you flip the switch on them, then they become passionate. And some cases it's early enough, and some cases it's kind of late. But you have to tell them, now this is what you have to do to catch up, right?
Yes.
So we're coming close to the end of our time. I want to find out, what does Judith Gill, or Judy Gill, do for fun?
Oh, what do I do for fun? Is this
Yes,
pre-COVID or?
anytime, anytime. I know
Oh,
some of your passions, your photography. I know some of those things. But what do you do for fun?
well, I love movies. So I'll be at the cinema every Tuesday without COVID, of course, before COVID. I love the beach. So I do some sailing. I've done a little bit of diving and of course just swimming. Photography for sure. That's something that I really want to get back into in a serious way. And more recently, I've really been throwing myself into gardening because I find it's such a stress reliever at this time, as well as lending to this sustainability that we need to work for at this time and being able to feed ourselves a bit more. So those are the things that I do. Other than that, I have a heart for the community. I work with the Foundation School Scholarship Fund or Scholarship Fund to try to assist students who have graduated from school. And then there's Teachers Have Wings, where I'm working with teachers. It's a closed group. It's only for teachers, really, where we have our little space. I work with that as well. So, you know, there's so many things to do. There's so many things to do.
Yeah,
I'm just
they're
trying
not
to
the things
enjoy all
to do.
angles.
With lots of things to do. We want to make sure you're getting fun and it's just not one side. So
Yes,
based on what you've
definitely.
shared, it seems as though you have a pretty reasonable balance.
I
of
try.
stuff to do. So that is fantastic. Well, some persons might notice the artwork in the background. And as I mentioned to Judy before we came on camera, we're going to have that as another discussion because that too has been very impactful, I think, on both of our lives and what we like and the artist and his expression and his teaching. Because actually, where I am now in terms of my tours and the emphasis on history and heritage and culture, he did have a role to play in it, and that is Judith's dad. So maybe we'll come together again and we'll have a little more conversation where the focus will be on the arts and the struggling, or no, she didn't say struggling, the frustrated artist that Judy has called herself.
Yeah. Let me explain that for all those art people out there, so I don't be claiming anything that I don't deserve to claim. I consider myself a frustrated artist because I don't have the skill and the talent to do these things that you see behind me. But I think I have been looking at it so long and I have such an appreciation for it. So for me, I've channeled it into photography. But yes, art.
Yes. You use your artistic skills in a different medium. That's all. That's the only difference.
Correct.
It's not to say
Correct.
you're not an artist. It just is your expression is different. So we say thank you so much for joining us, Judy. It was a pleasure. We were able
My
to keep
pleasure.
it within the time frame because we stuck to very serious. As you can see, there were times where I talked quite a bit and Judy talked quite a bit because if we had started to interact, we would have been here for a few hours. So we
That's
were
right.
trying, that was our method of trying to keep on track. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you're still keeping safe and that you're keeping healthy. You're making sure you do your exercises, you do your brain dumps, you make your plans, and all of those wonderful things, opportunities that you have to do. Make sure you do them. And one of the challenges I threw out today was, most of us have a little challenge with money or with time, and I'm encouraging everyone to write a letter to money. I write a letter to time and start to build that relationship, try to heal that relationship. And let's make it a better thing. When we come out of this, we will have a better relationship with money and we have a better relationship with time. So that's my challenge to you on this, the curfew line. See you next time. Bye.
Okay, bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.